Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to yet another fantastic episode where I'm going to react to some of our top Indian celebrities and give you reviews on their public speaking skills. Today, it's one of my favorite women from the movie industry. This person, I feel, is one of the biggest banner names in the public speaking world, and it is none other than Priyanka Chopra. Without further ado, let's jump onto it and listen to one of her speeches and see what makes her a great public speaker.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Ava. She's 16 years old. An age where girls should be enjoying their innocence and joys of their youth. But she, at such a tender age, understands the importance of being a voice for her peers, an advocate for young girls and women around the world who may not have the opportunities that us sitting over here have. So receiving this honor from a hero like her makes this so much more exceptional. So
as she's starting, she immediately grabs your attention when she talks about Ava, who's the anchor and who presents the award. Now, what is happening there? She is recognizing somebody's effort and work when her work and effort is far beyond measurable than that 16-year-old. You see a leader in her. You see Priyanka Chopra not just as a fashion icon or as a Bollywood star, but now you're seeing her as a leader, a representative of the women or people who stand up for women. Like, that aura is immediately created and established.
good afternoon and thank you, and wow, I am so privileged and so honored to be sharing this afternoon with all of you and these incredibly amazing women that are being honored today. I'd like to extend my congratulations to each one of you. So in life, you know, there are moments when you stop and ask yourself, how did I get here? Like, why am I standing here? Well, this is definitely one of those moments for me. And I find myself going back to the beginning, back to my roots. I was born to...
See, if you watch some of my videos already, common trait, great public speakers have that organized speech. Past, present, future. If you go to most of my videos, you'll see me highlight on this point. This is because it is as important as Priyanka is saying it, even for you when you go to an interview and somebody asks you to introduce yourself, or somebody asks you to talk about yourself. Talk about your past, present and future. Instantly Priyanka Chopra is doing it, so should you.
Incredible parents. Amazing parents who served as doctors in the Indian Army. I was the firstborn, and as far back as I can remember, I made my parents very proud and happy 99% of the time. Okay, slight exaggerations of personal achievements are allowed from time to time, don't you think? My brother was born a few years later, and even then, nothing changed for me. We were both given equal opportunities, and I want to emphasize this. I want to really emphasize this for you because I don't think a lot of people might understand that being...
So there was a tiny stutter here if you heard her say the word emphasize.
And I want to emphasize this. I want to really emphasize this for you because...
Her tongue came in the front and she said emphasize. So it sounded like a lisp. Often what happens here is we could be nervous, we wouldn't have taken deep breaths before coming on stage. This is nervousness actually coming out of the body as different signs. Couple of things you might want to do. Breathing, like I already mentioned. Second, carry water with you when you speak.
People might seem very normal, but where I come from, India, and a lot of developing countries around the world, more often than not, this is an exception. It's actually a privilege. My first experience of the glaring disparity between boys and girls came at a very, very young age. I grew up in a middle-class family with extremely philanthropic parents who constantly reminded me and my brother how lucky we were and how giving back to those who were less fortunate was not a choice. It was a way of life. Simple. I was 7 or 8 years old when my parents started taking me on these visits in a traveling clinic to developing communities around and villages around the city that we lived in called Bareilly. We were packed into...
Another takeaway for me here is when you're introducing yourself, remember you are the person who could be described simply based on your value systems. What do you value the most? Empathy, trust, growth? What do you value? Here, Priyanka Chopra is trying to establish herself through these values. She's trying to say that her parents came from a philanthropic background and they also encouraged her to be a giver in life. So Priyanka Chopra is trying to say that she was a born leader and that was established through her parents.
This ambulance and my parents would provide free medical care to people who couldn't afford it. My job at the age of 8 was assistant pharmacist. So I would count all the medicines, put them in an envelope and give it out to patients, and I really took my job very seriously. Very seriously. But the more I went on these expeditions, the more I began to notice the simplest things that distinguished a boy from a girl or a man from a woman. For example, girls were pulled out of school when they hit puberty because they were considered ready for marriage and babies. That's 12 and 13, while boys still enjoyed their childhood. Or basic human rights such as healthcare were denied just because they were women. Let's call this whole experience trigger number 1 for me. Fast forward a few years and many triggers in between. Like a producer director, for example, early on in my career, I must have been about 18 or 19, telling me that if I didn't agree to the ridiculous terms or painfully low salary in his movie, that he would just replace me. Because girls are replaceable in the entertainment business. That was a memorable one.
There's another technique in public speaking that is making your story a part of a bigger story. She's bringing in women inequality not just in society but also at the workplace by using her own story. But she's now trying to tell you that I went through this too. Not just you who's watching, but I went through this too. The ability to kind of motivate and really inspire people comes from making your story a part of a bigger story. And that's exactly what she's doing.
It made me decide to make myself irreplaceable. But I think what really moved the needle for me and ultimately led me to create the Priyanka Chopra Foundation for Health and Education and around the same time partner with UNICEF was an encounter with my housekeeper's daughter. About 12 years ago, I came home from set early one day and she was sitting in my library reading a book. And she must have been 8 or 9 years old and I knew she loved reading. So I asked her, I was like, it's a weekday, why aren't you in school? And she said, oh, I don't go to school anymore. So I went and asked her mother and I said, why isn't she in school? And her mom said that her family couldn't afford to send her and her brothers to school, so they chose the boys. The reason, she would eventually get married and it would be a waste of money. I was completely blown and it shook me to my core. Eventually, I decided to cover the cost of her education so that she could continue to learn because education is a basic human right.
What Priyanka Chopra does next is use an example or an experience from her own story. Now, this is where the selling point of the message comes. I hate to use the word selling because it's such a beautiful message that she's trying to say. But as a public speaking coach, as somebody who looks at it not from the emotional aspect of it, but looks at it from just the technical aspect of it, this is where you actually sink into the story. I'll also tell you another thing, why I use the word selling. Ratan Tata uses a similar story of how he saw a man and a woman and a child go through an accident right in front of his eyes during a rainy day. And that's why he started the nano car, the most affordable car. Why is he saying that story while he's launching the car? He has great intentions. Intention here is great. But the selling point of the speech is when the emotion is high and logic is low. Sometimes when emotion is high and even logic is high, it works brilliantly. But one thing is common in both these statements that I said, emotion must be high.
And a huge necessity, especially today. From that point on, I was determined to make a difference in as many children's lives as I could, in whatever big or small way that I could contribute. There's a really beautiful quote that I read recently, and I think it's absolutely appropriate to explain what I'm trying to say today. The hand that rocks the cradle, the procreator, the mother of tomorrow. A woman shapes the destiny of civilization. Such is the tragic irony of fate that a beautiful creation such as a girl child is today one of the gravest concerns facing humanity. Girls have the power to change the world. It is a fact, and yet today, girls are more likely than boys never to set foot in a classroom. Despite of all the efforts and progress made over the last 2 decades, I'm just going to give you a stat, more than 15 million girls of primary school age will never learn how to read or write compared to 10 million boys. Primary school.
Wow. This for me is bottom line the most significant part of her speech. 2 things. Number 1, she talks about her credibility as a learned person. She says, let me tell you a quote from a book that I read. Let me tell you a quote that I read. Readers are leaders. So, simple fact that Priyanka Chopra is trying to tell you that she is a knowledgeable individual. She has depth in her own personality because she has done her homework. The second part, which really establishes this, is the statistic that she uses. The statistics about comparison between the male child and the girl child.
More than 15 million girls of primary school age will never learn how to read or write compared to 10 million boys.
What is happening here? Again, she is giving you numbers, proof of what she's saying is logically correct in terms of her words. She's trying to validate the words she's trying to say, and she's giving you proof. What better than numbers?
It's the beginning of our future. Over the last 11 years, I have witnessed firsthand the incredible work that UNICEF does for children around the world, especially victims and survivors of child marriage, displacement, war, sexual violence. But there is still so much work to do. And for me, that is the fuel to my fire. The reason I am so committed to this cause, and that is where my passion stems from, because I know that a girl's education not just empowers families, but communities and economies. A result of her education, we all do better. It's just as simple as that. As entertainers and influencers sitting in this room, I feel that it's our social responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless, which is why I applaud each and every woman in this room for being such a badass. For using your platform and your voice to contribute.
Now this I feel is very interesting. You might want to take a deeper look into this. She said 2 things. Number 1, she appealed to the audience. She said every single woman sitting in the room. That means now she's gathering energy. She's gathering that united energy of the feminine gender, and she's saying you have power. Now she's giving a CTA, a call to action. When emotion is high, action is quick. So she's hitting that rod at the perfect time, and she's asking all her fellow counterparts who are influencers and movie stars to take action. Second part to this, if she gave the same speech in India, she wouldn't use the word badass. Instead, she would say powerful women. She would say something very, respectful or something very dignified, and she would cover it up like that. Why is she saying badass? Because in America, the word badass means powerful. That's the equivalent. That means she's also catering her words and her speech according to her audience. And you might say, movie stars are there here also. No. Cultural differences.
Contribute to change and for ensuring that there is not even one lost generation as long as we are alive. I'd like to thank Variety and all of you for encouraging me and all of us in this room to keep going and fighting on. Thank you so much.
Last but not the least, she ends with a namaste that simply showcases that she has not forgotten her roots. She's trying to showcase where she comes from by that simple gesture, and I'm sure while you were watching this video, you also felt nice that she has a culture that is on that stage in front of a Western audience. All in all, I think PC is a fantastic public speaker, one of the finest, I must say, in the entire industry of Bollywood or in India. If you want to be as powerful, as great as Priyanka Chopra is, follow these certain techniques that I've given you, and I'm sure you'll reach there much quicker than you think. For more such videos, guys, make sure you hit the comment section and tell me which is the next personality or which is the next woman that you want me to cover and decode all their public speaking secrets so you could become just like them. On that note, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, and the share button, and I'll see you soon.